in occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hello, Mack Pack. Great to be back with you. I am Mack Worley III, and this is On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for rights. Today is going to be a really good show. I'm really looking forward to it, and I think it's about time. The date is September 7th, 2014, and like I said, we got a good show in store for you. With that said, we're going to be covering a lot of topics today. It's all going to interweave into each other. We're going to be talking specifically about the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, otherwise known as ISIS. We're also going to deep dive on this subject and the history about this. So we're going to talk about their history, their funding, who funded them, who trained them, who armed them, and more importantly, we're going to discuss the circumstances that arose for them to become such a threat. How did they get to this point? How did they get this much power? Who's responsible? That's the question. Who is responsible? So throughout today, I want to hear from you guys. Please call in. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Our MacPack lines are open, so feel free to light them up. Your insight onto this is definitely appreciated. And any other topics that you would like to discuss, they're also on the table. So anything that you would like to discuss, please feel free to call in. All topics are on the table. So if you want to do that, you can call in again. The number is 619-924-0986. Again, 619-924-0986. Or you can email us at talk@onthemoveshow.com. Again, today we don't have a guest, but we may be taking some of your calls if you would like to join us. Don't forget to check us out here at blogtalkradio.com/onthemoveshow. You can follow us here. We got a website, onthemoveshow.com. We got a bunch of stuff on there as well. Also, you can like us on Facebook, On the Move Show, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/onthemoveshow, and follow us at On the Move Show on Twitter. We also got a store on our homepage there. You can click the shop link and access that. We got lots of products for sale on there, ranging from T-shirts, freeze-dried food, to books that I recommend reading, bumper stickers, and I mean, there's a ton of stuff on there. So feel free to check that out. Your purchases will make our show bigger and better. Everything that you guys are buying on there, we're going to put it back into the program. You know, new equipment, new platforms and avenues that we can access and actually make the show bigger and better. So we really do appreciate your support on that. And, I want to talk about some of the changes that we're making. Last episode I kind of talked about some of the things I'm trying to figure out. As of right now, we're working on transitioning totally over to YouTube for the live show. That's the goal. That's what I hope to get to at some point. And this process, obviously, it's going to take a little while. And that's primarily because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So, with that said, we're still trying to make things better, though. And in the meantime, we started to record the video, and I'm posting clips on YouTube on the actual show. You can actually see what's going on in studio here and be a part of it that way. So feel free to check those videos out. Clips from this show will be on our YouTube channel this following week here. So that's youtube.com/onthemoveshow. And eventually, everything is going to be moved to the live event feature of YouTube, so that the whole show will be live video. We'll still have a way that you can access the audio if you want to download the podcast for that purpose. We'll still have that available, but it will be available through our website, onthemoveshow.com. So anyway, this process is going to take a while. In the meantime, we're still on Blog Talk Radio. This is still what we're doing, and it's what we have to work with right now. So anyway, we're moving on, and if you guys want to join the conversation, again, feel free to call us up here. We're moving to the first segment of the show, and we like to refer to it as the Weekly Defender. The clip is loading.
And now it's time for the Weekly Defender. You have the right to defend your life, the right to defend your family, and the right to defend your freedom.
All right, this is a segment of the show where I report about armed citizens in the news. It's been a while since we've done one of these, so I wanted to put it out first and foremost today before we got into anything else, because I know as time goes on, I get distracted. I get into what we're doing. We take calls. We read your emails and things like that, and we just run out of time. So I wanted to do this first today. So our first weekly defender we found on KTVK in Phoenix, Arizona. A man approached a woman in a vehicle in Phoenix, Arizona, and asked if he could use her phone. The woman refused. The man dragged her from the vehicle. A woman who lives nearby noticed the situation and went to investigate. While the neighbor was near the carjacker accelerated, injuring her. The neighbor's husband responded by firing at the carjacker, striking him. The wounded carjacker fled the scene, but was captured a short time later after he had crashed the stolen vehicle. The carjacker died after being taken to a hospital, and this was on, August 15th of this year. So, I find it very crazy that somebody would put their life on the line for somebody else. Not crazy bad, but crazy good. It's one of those things that a lot of people think that nowadays people just don't care. People don't care about their neighbors. Everybody's kind of isolated and apathetic. It's somebody else will deal with it. Call 911, let the police take it over. But this individual, both of these neighbors, they took the time and put themselves at risk to help somebody else. I find that amazing. It's a great story, and it's unfortunate that the carjacker died, but it is what it is. You got to do what you got to do. This person was obviously out to hurt people and didn't care about anybody else. So anyway, our next weekly defender we found on the Daily Caller, an Ohio woman who was licensed to carry a gun but had only recently started carrying one for protection, put it to good use earlier this week. Dina Burns was out walking her dog Gracie on a path near an elementary school in Lancaster on Monday when two men approached her with a baseball bat and threatened to abduct her. Two gentlemen came out of the woods, one holding a baseball bat, and said, "You're coming with us." Burns told WBNS, adding that Gracie was little help in deterring the men. Thankfully, Burns had something else for protection. This is her words. "I said, 'Well, what do you want?' And I was saying that as I was reaching into my pocket and slipped my gun out. Slipped the safety off as I pulled it out," Burns said. As I was doing that, the other gentleman came towards me and raised the baseball bat, and I pointed the gun at him and said, "I have this, and I'm not afraid to use it." The men backed off and left. Burns told the news station, "I think that if they'd gotten any closer, I probably would have fired," she said, citing her concealed carry training taught her to get out of the situation, back out of it as much as you can without having to discharge your firearm. She said, "I'm very thankful that it turned out the way it did, and I hope it didn't happen again, but I will be prepared," Burns said. Ohio, which began issuing concealed carry permits in 2004, has experienced a massive surge of new concealed carry permit requests. According to an article from the Columbus Dispatch, earlier this year, 96,972 new permits were issued in 2013, a 50% increase from 2012. Permit renewals quadrupled over the same time span to 48,370. So we here at the show, we love to hear about how people have used firearms to protect themselves. You have a right to defend your family, you have a right to defend your life, and you have a right to defend your freedom. We at On The Move, we support your rights, and if you have a story about how you lawfully defended yourself or you would like to comment on one of these stories, we would love to hear from you. Give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. All right, so at this point, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break, and when we get back, we'll enter into the Mack attack, so don't go anywhere.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us. So, many of you know that I have been involved in a legal case and that it has to do with open carry. If you want to get some more information about it, we've done plenty of shows about it at this point, but we have a video on our YouTube of my unlawful arrest, my unlawful detainment and disarmament from the Vancouver Police Department. Feel free to check out that video. It's youtube.com/OnTheMoveShow, and it's actually on the main page there. It's our featured video. Feel free to click that and take a look. You can see it for yourself what happened. So anyway, I have a guest coming on the show here. Her name is Chrissy, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about an article that she's writing. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chrissy, it's about my situation. Am I right?
Yes, you got it.
Okay, so what are some things that you're working on right now for that?
Right now I'm listening to a lot of your YouTube and some stuff that you have told me personally. And I also wrote an article for 2AO Nation about the Chicago crisis and how they're trying to make it a gun-free zone. And we know that gun-free zones don't work because we're taking away the guns that people legally own to defend themselves and putting them into the hands of the criminals.
Absolutely. Yeah, I read that article. And by the way, do you have an address for our listeners so that they can go check out the article on Chicago you wrote?
No, I don't, but I can get it and post it on your Facebook page.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. I'll share it on our main page, Facebook page for the show. So facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. After the show, I will post a link for that. You guys can check it out. I liked your take on it, and I like the fact that you gave us some of the background on you as far as from where you're coming from and everything. Can you kind of give our listeners some insight into your mindset as far as guns and whatnot?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Jersey, and of course in Jersey there's no open carry, there's no guns whatsoever. And I lived there all my life until I moved to Texas in 2011, and it wasn't until maybe about 6 or 9 months ago that I started listening to Buck Sexton, and I've always listened to Glenn Beck, but more so Buck, and I got more involved in politics and understanding what my rights were as far as 2A. I don't have a gun right now, and I've learned a lot more that it's your right, and it's not something that you should go into lightly. You need to have a lot of responsibility and understand what it's all about. And now that I have a lot more friends that have guns, I'm kind of seeing it in a little bit of a different light. Everybody's been sheltering me since I was a kid, saying, oh, you shouldn't have guns because this reason or that reason, or you're going to get hurt or something. But if you're trained the proper way and you have somebody who's instructing you, and you go to a range and you practice and you put it under lock and key when you're not using it, then I don't see what there's a big problem about. And in your case, I don't think that you didn't do anything wrong as far as I can tell. But that's just me being an outsider.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Sorry about that unintentional break. We had a problem with our internet service here. Apparently, Skype has been disconnecting me. I've been having nothing but trouble with this, and this is a big reason as to why we're looking at moving away from this service. So I don't know if it's my internet or if it's Skype itself, but yeah, it's been causing me nothing but problems. So anyway, we got Chrissy back on the line. Are you there, Chrissy?
Yes, I am.
Hey, sorry. I'm real sorry about that. Okay, the last thing I heard, you were saying that, as far as how some of the things have changed with you in regards to the way you look at firearms. I believe the last thing I heard you say is that as long as you're trained on it, you've got some experience shooting at the range and everything, and you keep it secured and everything, you don't have a problem with firearms.
Correct. And as far as my family, I don't really know what their take is. We all grew up in the Northeast, so none of us were really exposed to guns. So I don't know. I just think that my view has changed with being involved in politics and being in a state like Texas where it's more, I guess you could say, common to have a gun than not.
Absolutely.
And as far as your case, I don't think that you did anything wrong. But that's just my outside view.
Well, that makes two of us. But, it's, as far as, because, I've had people that have asked me, do you think it was smart? Do you think what you did was smart? And, my answer to that is of course it was smart. I mean, not that I'm a smart guy or anything in terms of that, but, if you're not violating any laws, how can you be arrested? If what you're doing is within the bounds of every law that we have on the books, how can you be arrested? And more on that, how can you be arrested and found guilty? There were so many mishandlings of this. I'm really disturbed at what happened to me specifically because, and it's happening all across the country, and we need to be clear about that. I see so many videos people send me every day. I can't even watch them now hardly without just getting so upset at what's happening. First and foremost, the police mishandled how they dealt with the situation. Obviously, I should have never been arrested, but on top of that, then I should have never been prosecuted, and on top of that, I should have never been found guilty. It just blows me away. We're still fighting it, as I've said before, but it's just a process. It takes a really long time to overturn a conviction, and it's something that's going to cost a lot of money and a lot of time, But anyways, so you're actually writing an article about that, and what publication is that going to be in? I
think I'm going to get it over to 2AO Nation in a month or so.
Okay.
They publish every quarter.
Okay. I'm definitely excited to read that, and I know I spoke with you before about this. I trust you. You and I, we've talked before. We're Facebook friends, and actually, you're responsible for getting Chad Kent on the show. We had him on. That was a while ago. That was a few months ago, and Chad's a really awesome guy. Can you talk about some of the things that Chad's doing?
Sure. Right now, we're getting set for him to go down to San Antonio for a week to do some lectures and his speeches to a couple of different Tea Party groups and homeschool associations down in that area. And we're trying to get him a couple of different bookings around the country, and as far as maybe doing some homeschool association meetings over the next couple of years.
Absolutely.
We're just trying to expand his horizon and to do other things, because we need to get that word out as far as the Constitution.
Yeah, and that's to our listeners. If you don't know who Chad Kent is, he wrote a book on the Constitution. Trying to make it simplified, and then now he's going around and he's making speeches about it and trying to talk about the principles of the Constitution. He's a constitutionalist in terms. So, I was really excited to have him on the show, and Chrissy is the one that contacted me to bring him on. But he's got a YouTube channel. He talks a lot about the Constitution and tries to relate it to modern terms and put those principles to actual practice and in relation to what we see today, what's going on. I really like Chad. I think he's got a great head on his shoulders, and from what I understand, he's a regular on the Chris Salcedo show. Is that right?
Yes, every
awesome.
Saturday afternoon. Mm-hmm.
That is awesome. Yeah. When I first saw that, I was so excited for him. So that's really cool. Feel free to check out Chris's stuff on there. Is there any other stuff that you're working on? Any other articles that you have going on right now?
Other than yours, no. I'm just trying to do a couple of different things as far as personally. I'm a singer, so I'm trying to write some songs, and I'm also trying to move apartments in between all of this. So I'm a busy girl.
Oh, yeah.
But
that sounds like it. So as far as singing, what do you got working on with that?
I have 4 or 5 different song lyrics for songs that I'm just trying to get together. I have one song that's pretty much done. It just needs to get recorded with someone that I've been co-writing with, and I've been just trying to write in between things that pop into my head, and it may take me a month, 3 months, a year to write it. It just when the inspiration hits.
So what kind of music is it?
It's pop. Some of it could be R&B. I think I've also written something in the style of country. It's all different things. Oh,
that's awesome. So you're eclectic and you're versatile when it comes to being able to sing different types of music.
Right. I've been singing since I was, 5 or 6. And then I used to write a lot of poetry, so of course one thing leads to another, and I've evolved from poetry into song lyrics, and now I've been writing like 2AO Nation. And your link is posted onto the website, by the way.
Great, awesome. I will post it back onto our main site there, so everybody can check it out. And again, Chrissy, I really appreciate you writing that article, and like I said, I definitely trust you. I have definite concerns about other people telling my side of the story. There's been so much misrepresentation of what actually happened, just like complete lies that are out there about my story. And I've had concern about other people writing, what actually happened. But I trust you, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. I really want to see more exposure to what happened, and not just to me, but to other people out there that are fighting the same kind of injustices. So. Again, Chrissy, I really want to thank you for calling in, and I definitely look forward to reading that article. Let me know when it comes out, okay?
Absolutely, I will. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, thank you. All right, guys, so at this point, we're going to cut to one more commercial break, and when we get back, we're going to start into the meat of the show. We're going to be breaking down the history and creation of ISIS, the Islamic State of Syria and Iraq. So don't go anywhere. Or Iraq and Syria. You do not want to miss this. We'll be right back.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
And we're back. Okay, like I said, we're going to be talking about ISIS. We're going to be talking about the creation of ISIS and the next segment that we like to call the Mack attack. So sit back, and you may want to take some notes on this because it's pretty in-depth. Here we go. All right, this is a segment where I bring you outrageous events in the news. So if you would like to join today's conversation, give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com, and we will read your emails live on the air. So last week, we were talking about Big Brother, and we're going to kind of build things around that conversation. We want to discuss the reason I'm talking about this in the first place, okay? So the concept that I hope you got out of last week's show, okay, is the fact that the entire system is built for us. It's built for you and me. It's meant to watch the people. It's meant to control us and to keep us under the thumb of the government, metaphorically speaking. And if you took only one principle away from last week's show, I hope it is this, that the federal Leviathan has been constructed to control the people, not to protect them. When we sacrifice our liberty to this omnipresent machine, even if it's supposed to be on a temporary basis, we're never going to get it back. Liberty lost is lost forever. All we have to do is look at the Patriot Act. I mean, for example, this thing was supposed to be temporary, but yet here it is. We're in 2014, and it's still there. Not only that, but it's expanded. And now we also see other things that complement it, like the National Defense Authorization Act, otherwise known as the NDAA. We have given the government all of the cards. They have all of the control, and we have trusted them to do the right thing, to keep us safe, because that was the bargain. We sacrifice our liberty to gain security. That was the bargain. So now you've got to ask yourself one question, and it's not, do I feel lucky? Has the government kept up their end of the deal? Are they keeping us safe? Should they be able to keep us safe from every threat? I mean, I would think that they should, considering that they control everything. They are the almighty, all-seeing, all-knowing spy machine that has unlimited scope and resources. So with that said, it should be a simple task, right, to keep us safe. Wrong. We aren't safe. And the government certainly isn't doing everything in its power to keep us that way. In fact, it behooves the government to keep us in a constant state of war. Having a constant threat allows them to keep asking for even more power. The usurpation of power is justified with the need for more power in order to protect us even better. So I am afraid that one day we're going to have a point, we're going to reach a tipping point here when we have such little recourse after giving them more and more power that we won't have any choice in any matter, foreign or domestic. So let's talk about the threats to us, and this is where ISIS comes into play. Right now, we're all concerned, and I know many of you are, I know I am, concerned with the growing Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS as they're called. Sometimes they're referred to ISIL, but in terms of today, we're going to refer to them as ISIS. So do any of you out there in Radio Land wonder where these guys came from? I mean, more specifically, how did they get this formidable? They have far less numbers than the Iraqi army, but yet they've seemed to have little problems rolling over these guys. So how did they get their weapons? How did ISIS get their weapons? Who trained them? Who funded them? What are their origin? What's the history? All of these questions are overlooked by the mainstream media. They don't even ask it. It's not even a thought process to them. They deal with incident by incident. Each event is its own isolated incident or group, depending on if you're talking about ISIS or if you're talking about the Taliban or Al-Qaeda. You look at the now in the mainstream media. You don't look at the why, the how, when it happened, how it got to this point. None of that comes into play because it's difficult and it's hard to wrap your head around. And it's meant to be difficult and hard to wrap your head around because it's a covert war. And if you want to get to the truth of the matter, you have to start with the Cold War. So I'm getting some of this information from Wikipedia, and I know it's not the most credible source, but a lot of this information is right on. So according to Wikipedia, historians have not fully agreed on the dates of the Cold War, but between 1945 and 1991 is the common accepted time when the Cold War happened. It was cold because there was no large-scale fighting between the two sides, although there were major regional wars in Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan that the two sides supported. And by two sides, it's referring to the United States and the Soviet Union. The Cold War split the temporary wartime alliance against Nazi Germany, leaving the USSR and the U.S. as two superpowers with profound economic and political differences. The former being a single-party Marxist-Leninist state, and the latter being a capitalist state with free elections. The first phase of the Cold War began in the first 2 years after the end of the Second World War in 1945. The USSR consolidated its control over the states of the Eastern Bloc, while the United States began a strategy of global containment to Soviet power. And they did this by extending military and financial aid to countries of the Western Europe. For example, they supported the anti-communist side in the Greek Civil War and creating the NATO alliance. So at the beginning, right after World War II, these tensions started to really come to the surface here. We started to see that, okay, one of the biggest problems that we're going to see here, one of our biggest enemies, geopolitical enemies that we're going to have to face is Russia. And that with 1948 to 1949, during the Berlin blockade, this was the first major crisis of the Cold War. With the communist side in the Chinese Civil War and the outbreak of the Korean War in 1950 to 1953, the conflict expanded even further. So I mentioned before, I got to point it out again, General Patton, after World War II, he recognized this threat that Russia posed, the threat that they would become, that they could grow into. He recognized that they were the next foe. And he even said in his memoirs that he recommended that we actually invade Russia, the Soviet Union, after World War II, because they were decimated. After that war, they were destroyed. They had to do some major rebuilding of their military and their infrastructure. I mean, this country was in shambles. And he figured, hey, strike now while we can, because if we give them time to recover, they're going to be a problem down the road. But yet we didn't do it. And, that's not necessarily a good thing. I don't necessarily think it's great to attack somebody who you have no reason to attack just because you want to preempt something that could potentially happen. But we see now that he was probably right. Anyway, the USSR and the USA competed for influences in Latin America and decolonizing states of Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. Meanwhile, the Hungarian Revolution of 1956 was stopped by the Soviets. The expansion and escalation sparked more crises, such as the Suez Crisis in 1956, the Berlin Crisis of 1961, the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. You can see how all this starts escalating and escalating. Following the last crisis, the new phase began that saw the Sino-Soviet split complicate relations with communist spheres, while U.S. allies, particularly France, demonstrated greater independence of action. The USSR crushed the 1968 Prague Spring liberalization program in Czechoslovakia, and the Vietnam War, 1955 to 1975, ended with the defeat of the U.S.-backed Republic of South Vietnam, prompting further adjustments. By the 1970s, and we're starting to get closer up to the actual problem in the Middle East, where this all started. And I know this is going down a rabbit hole that you guys may not be following right now. Why are we talking about the Cold War when the show is about ISIS? We'll get to it. It all leads to it. So by the 1970s, both sides had become interested in accommodations to create a more stable and more predictable international system, inaugurating a period of detente I think that's how the word is. It's got an apostrophe. I can never read words that have apostrophes. Anyway, detent, I believe, is the word. That saw strategic arm limitations talks and the U.S. opening relations with the People's Republic of China as a strategic counterweight to the Soviet Union. Detent collapsed at the end of the decade with the Soviet war in Afghanistan beginning in 1979. Okay, so as I said, this may not seem like it has anything to do with ISIS, but now here we are in the Middle East. The Soviet war in Afghanistan began in 1979, and it lasted for 9 years, from December 1979 to February 1989. Part of the Cold War, it was fought between Soviet-led Afghan forces against multinational insurgent groups called the Mujahideen, mostly composed of two alliances, the Peshawar 7 and the Tehran 8. The Peshawar 7 insurgents received military training in neighboring Pakistan and China, as well as weapons and billions of dollars from the United States, the United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, and other countries. The decade-long war resulted in 850,000 to 1.5 million civilians dead, as well as causing millions of Afghans to flee the country, mostly to Pakistan and Iran. So here's a fun fact, everyone. All right, just a real fun fact. During the Soviet war in Afghanistan, one of the fighters to whom we provided ammunition, weapons, and training just so happened to be somebody that we're all familiar with. And you might remember this man. I mean, he's got a common-sounding name. You may not remember him. His name just so happened to be Osama bin Laden. Okay? I don't know if that rings any bells with anybody out there. So let's review. All right? The United States funded, trained, and armed Osama bin Laden in an attempt to fight the war against the Soviet Union by proxy. We wanted to stop the Russians from spreading communism and gaining more control. This proxy war has been historically attributed to helping in the collapse of the Soviet Union. So it worked, right? I mean, everything worked out exactly how we thought it would, right? Well, okay, that part, I suppose, worked, I guess. But now we created a guerrilla force in the Middle East. So fast forward here, some time has passed. We have Saddam Hussein in the power now, and the United States looked the other way at his war crimes because he appeared to bring some stability to the Middle East. And I think we all have discussed and we know that one policy of the U.S. involvement in the Middle East is to create stability. We want it to be stable over there because we want that oil. You know, we'll deal with you guys, you know, your war crimes, your genocide. We'll deal with the jihadists over there, all because we want that black gold that you're standing on. We want that stuff, okay? We need it for our SUVs and all this other stuff. We need that stuff. So we'll deal with you, okay? But, you know, we're sweeping his war crimes under the rug, Saddam Hussein's war crimes under the rug, because he was serving the interests of the United States, okay? So, you know, he's a dictator, he's an awful guy, but hey, you know what? He does what we say when we say it, and you know what? He's controlling the region to a point where it's somewhat stable. So he's good for us. This is a good thing for the United States. So the U.S., we funded him, all right? We gave Saddam money. We provided him with weapons, all right? Some of which, by the way, are chemical weapons. We gave Saddam weapons of mass destruction. Why didn't we find any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, by the way? We'll get to that. Don't worry. We're on our way there now. But then, when he started using these weapons, Saddam, and he started acting on his own interest, for his own interest, you know, this didn't sit well with the United States government, who looked at Saddam as a puppet. I mean, his whole point is to do what we say. We've swept all these war crimes under the rug. Hey, you better do what we say because you're only here because we allow it. So the way the government looked at it is if he couldn't be controlled, then he had to be removed. He had to go. So the Gulf War was more of a slap on the wrist for his actions. You know, all the war crimes that the U.S. government had swept under the rug before, they brought it all out. It's time for us to talk about it, air this dirty laundry. And the media, they ate it up. They covered it nonstop. And eventually the American people were clamoring for action against Saddam because, of course, he's evil. I mean, he's a war criminal and he's killing innocent people. Something had to be done, right? It was a humanitarian mission. During the Iraq War, it was clear that Saddam's usefulness had come to an end, and the same tactics again were used. The media aired the war crimes once again and gained more support, and it didn't even matter that Saddam did not have anything to do with 9/11. Had nothing to do with the whole thing. The whole reason why we went into war to begin with was because somebody attacked us and we wanted to just lash out at whoever it was. So we go to war with Iraq, and it has to do with these chemical weapons. And hey, let us check, let us inspect. And Saddam wouldn't let us in, so okay, led to war. All right. We're also getting involved in Afghanistan shortly after that, and this is the good war. This is the war that was retaliation for 9/11, the good war. And I'm using air quotes here, people. So obviously the people, you and I and all of our friends and family, we were angry. I know I was. I was really, really angry after 9/11. I was furious that we had been attacked, and even I fell prey to this propaganda machine by the military. They're bringing out things to make it look like Iraq is responsible and all this. And at the beginning I didn't support the war in Iraq, and towards the end I was like, well, we kind of got to stay there and finish the job and things like that. But I digress. I'm getting a little further into the weeds. So let's point out here specifically what happened on 9/11. We were attacked, and we were attacked not just by somebody who we didn't know of, not just by an organization that we couldn't have predicted could have done this, an organization that we had no idea what their capabilities was. We were attacked by the same person who we armed and trained on September 11, 2001. We were attacked by the people that we actually trained. Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden, he grew his power and influence. He created a pretty fairly powerful terrorist organization. I mean, it was one hell-bent on destroying the West. Eventually, when we did go after Osama, we're doing this while we're simultaneously involved in heavy fighting in Iraq. Jihadists, they joined Osama's fight, and they flocked to Afghanistan and Iraq to join the fighting. We never found these chemical weapons in Iraq. Weapons that we gave Saddam. So where did they go? Where are these weapons? I mean, we know they had them. So where are they? My guess is they went to Syria, which is why I think we heard of Syria using chemical weapons in their civil war. But we'll get to that a little later in the show. We're not quite at that point. So let's flash forward here to September 11, 2012. All right? The American embassy in Benghazi was attacked. The controversy over Benghazi has a lot to do with the fact that the government did not send any support or help during the attack. There are so many questions in regards to Benghazi that we may never actually get the truth from. We may never know because all of the witnesses are dead. All of them are dead. Well, I wonder why the government didn't provide any sort of help. We have all these questions, and I believe that Trey Gowdy actually summed it up perfectly in this clip. I have a clip here, and I've played it before, but it bears repeating. Let's just say that. And this clip is aimed towards the media, and it's discussing the cover-up of Benghazi. And I'll go ahead and play it for you guys, and it's a real quick clip. It only takes a couple minutes, and he just annihilates the media for their lack of asking questions. Here it is.
Thank you, Jimmy. We will not waver in our commitment to see that justice is done for this terrible act in Benghazi. And make no mistake, justice will be done. That was the President of the United States over a year ago. We're investigating exactly what happened. But my biggest priority now is bringing those folks to justice. That was the President of the United States over a year ago. No one has been arrested. No one has been prosecuted. No one has been brought to justice. We don't even have access to the witnesses. You and the media were good enough for my 16 years as a prosecutor not to tell me how to do my job. And so far in Congress, y'all have been good enough not to tell me how to do my job. I'm not telling you how to do your job. But I'm going to ask you some questions, and if you can't answer these questions, then I'll leave you to draw whatever conclusion you want to draw about whether or not the media has provided sufficient oversight. Can you tell me why Chris Stevens was in Benghazi the night that he was killed? Do you know? Does it bother you whether or not you know why Chris Stevens was in Benghazi? Do you know why we were the last flag flying in Benghazi after the British had left and the Red Cross had been bombed? Do you know why requests for additional security were denied? Do you know why an ambassador asking for more security days and weeks before he was murdered and those requests went unheeded? Do you know the answer to why those requests went unheeded? Do you know why no assets were deployed during the siege? And I've heard the explanation, which defies logic, frankly, that we couldn't have gotten there in time. But you know they didn't know when it was going to end. So how can you possibly cite that as an excuse? Do you know whether the president called any of our allies and said, can you help? We have men under attack. Can you answer that? Do any of you know why Susan Rice was picked? The Secretary of State did not go. She says she doesn't like Sunday talk shows. That's the only media venue she does not like, if that's true. Why was Susan Rice on the 5 Sunday talk shows? Do you know the origin of this mythology that it was spawned as a spontaneous reaction to a video? Do you know where that started? Do you know how we got from no evidence of that to that being the official position of the administration? In conclusion, Congress is supposed to provide oversight. The voters are supposed to provide oversight. And you were supposed to provide oversight. That's why you have special liberties, and that's why you have special protections. I am not surprised that the President of the United States called this a phony scandal. I'm not surprised that Secretary Clinton asked, what difference does it make? I'm not even surprised that Jay Carney said Benghazi happened a long time ago. I'm just surprised at how many people bought it.
So this is what we're dealing with. Right now, we have a government that's basically lying to us, covering things up. And this government is the same government that's asking for more power, more control, more ability to protect us. And again, that's air quotes. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what was going on in Benghazi? Why were we there to begin with? All right? And let's actually talk about what happened leading up to the attack on Benghazi. I'm kind of off into the weeds, but I think it's important because we need to discuss it. This terrorist organization had threatened to attack several places. They had 3 places that they said that they were going to attack. One of them was a Red Cross. The other one was, I believe it was a British embassy. And then the next one was the American embassy in Benghazi. They had already attacked of the 3 targets that they promised that they would attack. And black flags were flying all over Benghazi. So it's no surprise that the ambassador said that, hey, we need some more support. We are in a tight spot here. You know, we need more security. We have some serious security problems. So why wasn't any of that done? Why wasn't any help given during the attack? Why were there no planes flying in, no drone strikes, nothing, no support given to these people, even though they were watching what was unfolding in real time? They knew what the situation on the ground was, and they had people strategically positioned to support and come help. But no one came and helped. So what are the motivations for not helping? Why wouldn't we want to help our own people in Benghazi? Why would we just let this embassy fall into the hands of these jihadists? Why would we let 4 Americans be killed? So again, we have to ask ourselves, what was going on in Benghazi? It's been speculated, and this is what I am prone to believe, that the situation in Benghazi was actually a undercover station set up by the CIA to covertly arm the Syrian rebels. And if you aren't familiar with what's going on in Syria right now, Syria is in a civil war. There are rebels in Syria, and there's the regime, and they are fighting each other for power. Assad can handle the Syrian rebels as long as these rebels are not supported by the U.S. But again, we are in this Cold War mentality. All right, Assad is supported by Russia, even though he's a stabilizing force to the region. Okay. We don't like him because he's supported by Russia, and he likes Russia. He doesn't like the United States. He's not our little puppet. He's not our patsy. He's not able to do what we tell him to do because he doesn't want to. And because of that, we do not like him. Even though he's providing stability to the region, we don't like him. He's a horrible person. He's a ruthless dictator. He's committed atrocities and war crimes, obviously. But this wasn't a problem for us when it was Saddam who was doing it, as long as that person was doing our bidding, as long as they were doing what we said. But Assad does not do what we say. He does what the Russians say, because the Russians back him. So the logic here is that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So if Russia is our enemy and Assad is backed by Russia, that makes Assad our enemy, right? Well, then the enemy of Assad must be our friend, right? These Syrian rebels, they have to be our friends. These have to be people that we should support. So the speculation is that this undercover station in Benghazi was set up by the CIA to arm these Syrian rebels. Even though we weren't supposed to be doing that, we said we weren't doing that. But why would the U.S. want to support the Syrian rebels? Again, it's that question, that the answer I already gave. The Syrian rebels oppose Assad, who is a proxy of Russia, so it's a good thing for us, right? So it doesn't matter that Assad is keeping the region stable, more so than what the Taliban or Al-Qaeda would do, all right? So why? Again, we look back at the Cold War. Our biggest geopolitical opponent is Russia. Syria is backed by these Russians. This is a basic concept that you have to understand in this, okay? It's the Cold War mentality. This is why I discussed the Cold War previously here. So the way the government looks at it is if it hurts our enemy, it has to be good for us, and they don't care if the region is massively destabilized. They'll just rally the people again, you and me, for another ground invasion and install another puppet government in the region, one that we can control. So it's a good thing, right? These are all good things. So they refer to these Syrian rebels as moderates. Moderates, eh? All right. Well, what does a moderate mean anyway? A moderate terrorist or a moderate Muslim or a moderate Christian? Or what is a moderate? Okay, what does that mean? Well, I wouldn't think that you would all think that a moderate would mean working with and conducting joint operations with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, would you? I mean, that doesn't sound very moderate to me. Does it to you? But that's what's going on here. These Syrian rebels are actively working with terrorist organizations. These so-called moderates are also the ones that are likely responsible for the use of chemical weapons in Syria against the population. Oh, wait a minute. There's those chemical weapons again. Does that sound moderate to you? Using chemical weapons against civilians. Let's bring back the conversation of these chemical weapons. So, remember, we never found these weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We knew they were there. We gave them to them. Where did they go? What happened to the chemical weapons? Well, it's my assumption that it went across the border into Syria and then somehow fell into the hands of these rebels, and the rebels used this as a way to basically frame Assad, and it could have even been covertly orchestrated by the U.S. government as a way of us getting involved, boots on the ground in Syria. as we all know, that did not go the way our president had planned. He was assuming that we could get a bunch of support, more war, have another front in the Middle East. Great. But that didn't work out very well for him. The people did not want any kind of involvement in Syria, which is amazing. That's a great thing, especially considering the people that we would have been supporting and backing and arming and training and funding would have been these Syrian rebels. So, again, does this sound like a group of people that the U.S. can control, these Syrian rebels? You know, to make matters worse, it's very likely that these so-called moderates, these people who our government, our politicians, I believe even McCain, if I'm remembering correctly, was talking about these people being so moderate, all right, and that they're not anything to worry about. But it's very, very likely that these so-called moderates are the same exact people that we've been fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, other terrorist organizations. I mean, these are anti-West groups that are just bouncing around from country to country over there and looking for where the fight is the hottest. So now we are involved in covertly funding and arming these psychopaths again. So this leads us today. You know, this leads us to today. And again, the same people who we funded and armed and trained against the Soviet Union, the same people who we left our military weapons and vehicles to when we departed from Iraq, which is, by the way, it's directly against the military doctrine. Anytime that you are leaving an area and you cannot control what hands your weapons are going to go into, if they're likely to fall into enemy hands, you are supposed to destroy or disable vehicles and equipment that can be used for the enemy so that these cannot fall into enemy hands. But yet, we just left these things. And we know this because the terrorists are posting pictures on social media, videos of them taking control of these vast resources that we left behind. We literally put Humvees and armored vehicles and rifles and ammunition in the hands and under the control of jihadists. The same people who are armed against Assad in Syria, the same people who used chemical weapons against civilians, they're now the same people who are in ISIS. We've created these terrorists. We funded them. We provided them with training and weapons. We even gave them over a decade of war in their backyard to cut their teeth on. These are hardened veterans of war. They may not be on our side, but they are veterans of war. These people can fight. They know how to fight. And they're radical enough to be willing to die for their cause. They're radical enough to be able to be a martyr for their cause, be willing and able to blow themselves up in order to do a little damage to the enemy. So what can we do? What can we possibly do with all of this going on? Of course, you know, it's hard to see all of it because it's a lot of information. I mean, if you look at the history starting from the beginning, after the end of the World War II, if you look from that point and you start tracking all of the history up to this point, you see that we had our hands directly involved. And this ultimate principle, the ultimate principle of everything is that we are against Russia. We are against the Soviet Union and will support enemies of Russia in order to hurt them politically, hurt them financially, hurt them in any way militarily, take them down a peg or two. That's what this whole thing is about. It's about Russia. So once you understand that, you understand that all this conflict in the Middle East is about Russia. Then you start to be able to wrap your head around it. So what can we do? Well, I'm glad you asked, and that leads us to the next segment of the show, and we like to call it the Listener Challenge.
I challenge you to a duel. Did you hear that? Sounds like it's time for a challenge. Listener challenge. Listener challenge. Listener challenge. Listener challenge.
All right, this is a segment of the show where I challenge you guys to a mission, something that you can do. So, MacPack, listen up. Your challenge this week, if you choose to accept it, is to spread the word about what we talked about today. The sad fact is that people do not know the truth. We have to disseminate this information. It's the only way that we can fight back against the government's propaganda. Our policy of removing regimes that are not cooperating with the U.S. has created far more instability in the Middle East than any other factor. I can't say what the answer to or solution is to all of this because I don't know. I don't know what will happen. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know. I really don't. I don't have a clue how to get out of the situation that we've created. But what I can tell you is that repeating history will likely create a dangerous situation for us here at home. Remember, our government does not care about our safety. In fact, the more fearful we are, the better for them, the government. That just means that they'll be more inclined, that will be more inclined to give them power. And that's why I'm challenging you guys to spread the word about this. Talk to your family, talk to your friends, do your own independent research. Don't just trust anything I've said. Look it up yourself. It's all on the internet. It's all out there. You know, the fact is that we are in a dangerous situation right now. The world is becoming a more unstable place. Tensions between the United States and Russia are rising. The world is getting really dangerous. So I challenge you again, disseminate this information, spread it, talk with people. Feel free to share this show. Have people listen. It's the first hour of the show. Have them listen to the first hour of our show, and they will get a crash course on everything that happened and why it's important that we actually know about what's going on. And also, you have to keep in mind that right now, the policy of being the world police, if we just look at it at the face value, if we're assuming that we can defend everything, we can protect everything, we can give the government so much power that they'll be able to do it all, and they'll be able to actually protect us. It's false. That concept is false. And Alexander the Great, he once said, "He who defends everything defends nothing." You really have to think about that. He who defends everything defends nothing. Right now, we're trying to be the world police. We're trying to defend everything. We're trying to go against Russia because that's within our interest. But in doing all of these things, it's creating more instability and creating more things for us to have to defend. We're getting so spread out. And I have to bring up the historical relation. If you look, let's say the Roman Empire, okay? Hundreds of years, it grew and expanded through war. And it was very similar, if you really think about it, to the justification that we have now. Most of the war that was conducted in the Roman times by the Romans was looked at as a humanitarian mission. There was a lot of tribal wars going on in a lot of these countries, such as Gaul, that they were invading. And what they would do was they would set up a puppet government. They would create a governor that was backed by them and would listen to what they would say. They would do as the Romans told them to do because they would give them power and the ability to be able to do whatever they wanted at that point. They could be whatever tyranny that they chose because no one was left to stop them. Only the Romans would stop them, and the Romans would not. The Romans backed them and swept it under the rug like we're seeing today. The problem is that eventually the Romans ran out of money. And with their border so vast, they eventually couldn't afford to pay people to protect it. And they eventually couldn't even afford to send actual Romans to defend their borders. So they would pay mercenaries. And when they ran out of money, these mercenaries did not care about the cause. They did not care about Rome. They walked away from their post, and the barbarians started flooding in. And this is where we hear the term, the barbarians are at the gates. You know, the Gauls and the Visigoths and you know, the Persians, all of these countries started coming against Rome, the Roman Empire. They knew that they were weakened, and the wolves began to circle. So where are we now? We see we are in the same exact position. History is repeated. We have expanded. We have created an imperialistic border. We're literally setting up these governors that the Roman people were doing as well. We have set up these dictators in the Middle East to control the area so we can exploit it for its resources. And I'm not trying to be an American apologist up here. I'm not saying that we're evil as a people, but what I am saying is that we have been tricked. We have leaders at the helm that do not have our best interest at heart and that are lying to us, both in what we're actually trying to do in these countries as far as it's a humanitarian mission and why we care. Why do we care about these things? We've been lied. Anyway, this is probably the longest listener challenge that I've ever done. So that is this week's challenge. Spread the information. Share the show. Share everything that you can find. If you find an article online, share it. Link things together. Come up with your own creative ways to spread the word about it. That's this week's challenge. Stand up, speak out, get on the move. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and cut to a long overdue commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more and expand more on Big Brother and kind of carry over a conversation from last week. So don't go anywhere. You guys don't want to miss it.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
Hey everybody, we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. Again, this is On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. We've talked a lot about history today. We've talked about the ever-expanding federal Leviathan last week, and we covered some today. We're going to talk more about it. Earlier we were speaking about ISIS and Iraq, Syria, our involvement in the Middle East, and why it's in a constant state of war, why we have this constant threat over our heads, why we're always in fear that some terrorist is going to kill us. We're in fear for our safety almost at all times, it seems. And as we discussed, again, this is beneficial for our government. And I know these last two shows, they had to have seen, like suddenly I became a conspiracy theorist. Suddenly I've donned my tinfoil hat and I'm over here screaming from the rooftops with a megaphone, that Big Brother is watching you. Yeah, I understand, and I know how paranoid I sound. But let's be clear, I'm not making this stuff up. A lot of this stuff is fact. A lot of the stuff, you just Google it. I mean, look at it. They're not even trying to hide it. They know that so much of the population is apathetic, dulled down, doesn't care, distracted by whatever entertainment that they have nowadays. You're watching American Idol, or you're affectionately watching Big Brother, the reality TV show. I mean, it's ridiculous at the things that we are distracted by when this stuff is going on, and no one knows. No one knows. And it's because it's covert. They don't want us to know. They don't want us to see the real picture, the whole picture. You start piecing articles together, and you can actually draw conclusions that they don't want you to see, but they don't really expect anyone to actually do that. So I want to talk more about how we have become more like 1984, the book, than you might have expected. Last week I talked about surveillance. I talked about police interactions. I talked about how they're trying to control thought, control speech. All of these things are definite concerns, and they're around us. I know any of you out there can name at least one thing that they're doing to control speech. I know I listed off about 5 things that they were controlling speech, and how that ultimately leads to controlling thought. In controlling so much of our daily lives, we have given up so much of our power. And I want to talk a little bit about property, all right, in the founding of this country. So when we're thinking about property, you own it. You buy it, you pay it off, maybe you pay cash, maybe you get a loan, and the bank owns it, and then eventually you own it. Okay, well, that's great. That's the American dream, right? Everybody wants to own property or a house. It's the American dream. It's something that we all aspire to. It's something that we all look to as a way to measure success, that somebody has attained success, is they own property. They have their own house. They finally hit it. They finally hit it big. So the founders knew that property was important. It was one of the foremost things that they thought of. Because if you own something, you truly own something, you have so much control over your life, over your destiny. You have the ability to shape so much, especially back in those times. You can grow your own food. You become less dependent on somebody else. It's a possession, too, and you can pass it down to your children. And the beauty of being able to pass something down to the next generation is something that I think is vastly overlooked. When you think about your motivations every day, you wake up, you go to work. You may think, I hate this job. I don't know why I do this job. I'm so sick and tired of having to put up with people's crap. Whatever it is. I mean, some people love their job, and if that's great, awesome. You have truly succeeded if you love your job. But everybody gets burnt out. Everybody gets to the point where you really don't want to do this stuff, and you look to your motivations. Maybe you've hit a point in your life where you actually don't need to work anymore. So why are you still working? What are you doing it for? Are you doing it for you, or are you doing it for the generations that will come after you? Are you working so that you can pass something down, you can leave a legacy, your family can be better off than they were before? Many people are working for those reasons. But look at the system we're in now. We are now giving so much to the government. We are now nothing more than cattle. We're slaves to the government. They look at us as an income source, as a revenue maker. That's the only purpose that we serve for the government, not for them to serve us, but for us to work to give them tax money, and that serves them. We are servants. We are proletarians, the working class from 1984. We are the ones that are in the stupor, and we don't know what the heck the government is doing, but we're giving, on average, about 50% of our income towards the government, and we don't really own anything anymore when you think about it. Let's bring it back to property. What is property tax? Property tax. You have to pay tax on something every year that you own. You own it, but yet you still have to pay somebody else for it. Well, I believe that's called renting. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you're still paying for something, then you don't really own it. You're simply just renting the property from the government, from the U.S. government. They've nationalized the entire country. Every part of land belongs to the federal government. Whether or not you've owned it for 100 years, or you're a Native American and your family has been living there for generations and generations, it doesn't matter. The government owns it, and you are only allowed to use it because they allow you to. They allow you to use it. You don't have a choice of what they want to do with it. If the federal government comes in, i.e. the EPA, and says, hey, you know what, this has become a swampland all of a sudden. You know, I know your family's lived and owned this property for over 100 years, but now suddenly it's a swampland, and we have to protect this endangered turtle. And because this turtle is endangered, even though, you know, let's not forget that we've also, you know, said that we couldn't provide for this turtle in areas that we own, so we killed them all because we couldn't take care of them, so we just killed them, even though they're endangered. But when it comes to your property, you can't live here anymore. We're going to take it from you, or we're going to prevent you from building and doing what you want with your own land. You got to get permits now to build on your own property. You have to check it with not just the federal government, by the way, because they can come in, the EPA can step in at any point during your building process and say, nope, you can't do that. That's not environmentally friendly. We got to worry about global warming and you know, climate change and things like that. So, you know, building is not allowed for that reason. All right. But you also got to check it with the state government. The state government can say no. You got the local government, like cities and things like that, county governments. You got to go through so many hoops just to build something on your property that you own. You own it. Why do you have to ask permission to build on something that you own? And again, let's look at renting. If I wanted to knock out a wall in my rental home here, if I wanted to make some drastic change or do something different, I'm renting this property. So I have to, of course, check with my landlord and see if he's okay with me making these changes. If he's not okay with it, he owns it. He has the ultimate decision. It's his place. That is what property is now. We are checking with our landlord. And let's look at the word landlord. The federal government has become the landlord. Where did that name come from? Let's look back in history, okay? History of land in general, the real reason, one major reason why so many people left England and came over to the United States was at the possibility to own land. And then at the founding, they knew after the revolution that everyday people should be able to own land. It was such an important part of freedom and liberty that everyday people had to have the ability to control the property that they lived on and not be subjugated to a landlord. And again, that phrase came from the aristocrats, the elites, the royalty were only allowed to have to own land. Everyone else could simply rent it or live on it. So that's what we are seeing now. It's just changed hands. Instead of being to the royalty or being to the aristocrats, we now have given control over all of the land to the federal government. This centralized Leviathan that does not have our best interest at heart, as I have beat over and over on that dead horse. This government does not care about you. The only reason why they do anything is to gain more control. This government wants you to be a slave. It wants you to work your entire life, pay taxes, earn the state revenue, and then die. And you know what they get to do when you die? They get to tax everything all over again. Everything that you've ever worked for, everything that you have ever saved up, all the stuff that you're working for to try to make the lives of your family better, to leave something behind for your loved ones, they get to tax it again. That has got to be the estate tax. It has to be the most despicable tax I have ever heard of. I cannot imagine something that is more diabolical. I mean, honestly, think about it, people. When you're talking about the estate tax, people are hurting because their loved one died. All right? Someone you loved died and is gone. And you're mourning. You're in a state. You cannot even really put to words what you're feeling. And before you know it, the government is there getting its mitts on everything that this person that you loved worked for to leave for you and the rest of your family. We are becoming slaves. more and more we're being looked at by our politicians as tax revenue generators rather than citizens, and they are going out of control. They're running amok. They're taking too much power. They're taking too much control over our lives, and it's something I'm very concerned about. Anyway, I hope that you all are concerned as well. I hope that we've addressed some things that maybe are eye-opening to the situations that we're facing today. Anyway, we're going to cut to another commercial break. When we get back, I want some of you to call in, please. 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. I want to hear your take on it. I want to hear what you guys think about everything we discussed today. So please give us a call. And if you don't want to call, feel free to email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. I'll read your email live on the air, but I want to know what you guys are thinking right now. So let me know.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
And we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us. Again, the number of the show, if you want to call in and voice your opinion, speak your mind, the number of the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Since we do not have any callers in the queue, I will go ahead and move to another topic then. We'll just keep freestyling this episode. We got about 37 minutes left, and I'm just going to freestyle this here. So feel free to call in with your own topics. So one thing that I would like to talk about a little bit here is the way the left, they like to change names, and they like to redesignate things to something different. So we see that with Common Core. They wanted to and by left, I also mean progressives, and that can include people in the Republican Party. So, for example, we see, former Governor Huckabee, who he wanted to change the name of Common Core to something else because Common Core became toxic, apparently. So the use of the words Common Core was what he opposed. He didn't want people to continue to use Common Core as a description of what it actually was. Just change the name, same program. It doesn't matter. And we see that today through so many things that the left conducts. I mean, a lot of it's like psyops where they're trying to basically manipulate and control people, but let's look at the term moderate, okay, from what we were talking about with ISIS, okay? They try to make us believe that these terrorists are moderate simply because they say that they're moderate. It doesn't matter facts. Facts don't actually matter in this situation. It doesn't matter the fact that the Syrian rebels are very likely the ones that use the chemical weapons, and it also doesn't matter that these are probably the same exact people that we were fighting against in Iraq and Afghanistan, but simply naming them moderate now makes them a different group of people. And the fact that we have groups like the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and now ISIS, creating and forming different groups, naming them differently, they're actually using a similar tactic because now we assume that they're new. It's a new threat. It's new people. it's something we've never seen or dealt with, so how could we have predicted this? Well, it's pretty obvious when you start looking at the history that this is a situation that we have created. These are the same people, just under a different name. How can we expect them to act differently, do the same things that did not work out in our favor in the past, but yet now we're expecting different results? I believe that's a definition of insanity, is to repeat something over and over again and expect a different result. And we have a president who many would believe is incompetent. Many would believe is weak. I will not argue the fact that his foreign policy is weak. His presence is weak. His words are definitely weak. But I do not believe this man is incompetent. I believe that this man is actually probably an evil genius, honestly. And, you know, maybe that's going a bit too far there, but this man actually does not do things the way that his predecessors had done, in some terms. I mean, he's being taught things, and upon his upbringing, he learned from people who were great at covert war. For example, one of his mentors was actually involved in the arming of the Soviet rebels. These Soviet rebels that were in the Soviet Afghanistan war. The people that we were funding, i.e. Osama bin Laden, one of the people that has tutored and Obama has looked up to was actually responsible. He was actually had a hand in that process. So we can see how Obama has learned to be covert. He has not taken the same road that, for example, George W. Bush did with his overt war in Iraq. He has funded people and gave people money and done things under the radar while simultaneously acting inept and weak, but it's all an effort to basically get the same ends that he wants. Rather than putting boots on the ground, he'd rather send somebody else to do his dirty work. And again, this tactic isn't new or anything, but it's something that he's really hit full swing. So this whole concept of changing the name of something or a group or a program from something that people don't like, it's very similar to the Saul Alinsky tactic, okay? If you all are familiar, Saul Alinsky, he wrote the book called Rules for Radicals, in which, by the way, he dedicated to Satan, okay? He was the greatest deceiver of all. That's the excerpt in the book. He dedicated the book to Satan. So, first of all, I'm not a very religious man, but anybody who's dedicating something to the devil, I'm a little concerned with. There's a wee bit of evil there. If maybe I'm alone in this, but somebody who would dedicate a book to Satan, and basically the premise of the book is that the ends justify the means. You lie, you cheat, you steal. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you get what you want out of it, as long as the ends justify the means. And that is this administration's motto. The ends justify the means. It doesn't matter how you get to the point, but as long as you get where you wanted to be, doesn't matter if you had to lie to the people, you had to steal, doesn't matter. And again, Obama, when we see things like Obamacare, for example, the rollout, we were told that if you like your health care, you can keep it. You know, you wouldn't have to switch doctors. You wouldn't have to change anything with your health care. Nothing would change. Everything would stay the same. It's just some people are going to get more benefits. Some people are going to get the help that they rightly deserve, right? Because health care is a right, apparently now. Health care is a right. You know, we have been lied to and deceived. And nothing happens. Like I said, nothing happens. I got a video clip. He said 36 times that if you like your health care, you can keep it. But nothing happened. 36 times. In fact, several times, if you like your health care, you can keep it, period. Period. Very reminiscent to George Bush Sr. When he said, "Read my lips, no new taxes." And that was enough to cause problems for George Bush Sr. But apparently this is not doing anything to Obama. He got reelected. Blows me away at what America is thinking. I have no idea. The only thing I can assume is that, so many people are just caught up on the hope and change Kool-Aid that Obama tried to push through, and people didn't understand what he really meant by change. He wanted to fundamentally transform America. And let's start with Obamacare, okay? The concept that health care is a right. Health care is a right. Let's analyze this for a second here, okay? What is a right? When you think about it, that means something that you have absolute authority over. No one should be able to take it away. In order for someone to take it away, they have wronged you, okay? So let's talk about some other things that we've heard as a right and people are trying to say is a right nowadays, like electricity and heating and things like that. These are not rights. You do not have a right to electricity. You do not have a right to heat your home, especially if it's coming from a company. You don't have a right to health insurance or health care because you have to pay for it. It's a service. It's not nationalized, which I guess now it is, but when you are saying that you have a right to health care, you're saying that you have a right to someone else's time, money, energy, medicine, developments in medicine. I mean, all of it, when you think about it, you're saying that you have a right to that doctor's time. You have a right to that pharmaceutical manufacturer's time because even though they've pumped billions of dollars into this pharma product, and, we can get into the debate of whether or not it's ethical for the government to be funding these things. And when it is, I can see how it should be, if it was taxpayer money that was used to develop it, then yes, that kind of belongs to the people. So you kind of do have a right to that if the government helped develop it, but it's not. A lot of these, not all of them, obviously, but private companies make money because they sell the products that they create. If you start saying that you have a right to the product for free, how does that company stay in business? Without the government stepping in and bailing them out or providing money, how do they stay in business? The doctor who's seeing you in the office, how does he stay in business if you're not paying him for those visits? If you have a right to his time, you have a right to his services that he's offering. It's a business. This wouldn't apply in any other circumstance, although, we may see it get to that point down the line. We're talking socialism and communism, Marxism, where everything is nationalized, everybody is given their fair share. I'm using quotey fingers. Fair share. It's going to get to a point, if we continue down this road, where nothing you do is yours. You own nothing. You're working at the will of the government. You no longer have the ability to decide what you want to do. Instead, you'll wait until the government tells you what you'll do. You will be a slave. And this is it. This is at our door. People now have the right to health care. They have a right to that doctor's time. Any other business, let's look at it. A car repair. Hey, you have a right to a freedom of travel, right? You do. We all have the right to a freedom of travel. So does that mean that the mechanic has to work on your car because it broke down and you don't have to pay them? No. No mechanic in the world would work on a car for free. It is a business. They have to make money. They're doing these things not out of the goodness of their heart, but for the paycheck. All right? So you don't have the right to that mechanic's time. You don't have the right to tell him that he's going to do it, whether or not you pay him or not. Or you certainly don't have the right to have that mechanic work on your car and receive a paycheck from your neighbor. Because you have a right, but you don't have the money. Somebody's got to pay this guy, right? Well, your neighbor's got more money than you, so he should pay, right? He should pay his fair share because, you have a right to travel. No, this is nonsense. It's ludicrous. But this is the direction that we're going. This is Obamacare. This is it. the fact that somebody can make you buy something, and if you choose not to buy something, tax you for it, is unbelievable. The fact that you can steal people's money and give it to somebody else for something that is not a right. Healthcare is not a right. To steal something from somebody else is coercion and theft. I'm plain and simple. These are basic concepts. If I came into your house and took away money from you, even if you willfully gave it to me, but I just forced myself in and I had a gun or something, I'm not pointing it at you. I'm in your house. I got a gun. I'm asking for your money politely, and I'm coming through, digging through your stuff, seeing what you got. I'm doing an audit on everything that you have and saying, okay, well, I'm going to take 50% of this stuff. 50%. I didn't do any force, although I coerced you into it. Just the mere presence of me being there, twisting your arm in that way, that's coercion. And then let's say you don't want me to take it. All right? You say, no, I'm not going to give you this stuff. Then I pull out the gun. All right? That is burglary. That's theft. This is what we see with our federal government. The analogy applies here. Look at the IRS. The IRS shows up at your door. They do an audit, and they ask for tax money, and you decide you don't want to pay it. They will kick in your door and take it. They have no qualms about it. You don't have a right to that money, apparently, even though you worked hard for it and everything. That money belongs to somebody else. It belongs to everyone, the collective. It's not yours. You didn't earn it. You didn't build that, as Obama likes to say. You had help from somebody. You didn't build that. So your life's work belongs to somebody else. The collective is something that I really would like to talk about. The concept of a collective. I want to get into a little bit more. We're going to cut to another break real fast, and when we come back, I want to talk about the whole idea of a collective. What does it mean? How many people is a collective? And does a collective suddenly get more rights than an individual? We're going to talk more about this in a minute. Don't go anywhere.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back. We got about 21 minutes left in the show, so if you want to give us a call, join the conversation. The number of the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. So I want to talk a little bit about the collective. What is a collective? What makes a group of people suddenly have more rights than an individual? I want to talk specifically. Let's talk about quest for statehood, okay? Particularly in terms of, let's say, Puerto Rico. I'm sure you all have seen and are familiar with the conversations that Puerto Rico is now attempting to become a state. They want to be a state. So with being a state, that would mean that they have certain rights and the ability to vote and things like that. They would have more ability to influence the government, okay? So Puerto Rico, it's a group of people. It's an island. Right now it's considered a territory in the United States. But what makes that amount of people become a collective? What gives somebody the ability to be a collective? What number is it? Is it 100,000, 200,000, a million, 10? Is it 10 people? Or 10 people a collective? This to me is more of a majority than anything else. I'm not a fan of democracy. I would like to point it out. Democracy is the road to socialism, as said by Karl Marx, the creator of socialism and communism, Marxism. Democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting for what they'll have for dinner. And liberty is a well-armed lamb. That was quoted from Benjamin Franklin. So, collectiveness. Collectiveness is the antithesis of liberty. It's the exact opposite of liberty. Individual rights are what is important. Individual rights are what this country was founded on. Individualism, not collectivism. The right of one man to have control of his destiny, be able to choose what he wants to do as long as he's not hurting somebody else. But yet, we have this simultaneous concept of collectivism. And I'm not saying that Puerto Rico shouldn't become a state, but I want to point out the fact, how many people does it take? How many people does it take to actually have that right to become a state? Is it just me? If I said, hey, I want to be the state of Macedonia or something, Maconia, then, the Mackistan, is that possible? Is somehow at what point would I be allowed to have Mackistan? All right, would it be if me and a friend decided to do it? Me and 100,000 people decided that they wanted to create a state? How many people does it take? What number is this collective tipping point? At what point is it no longer, just a few people? Is it individuals? But at what point does this group now become influential enough to actually have the ability to become a state, or even more so, a country? Let's look at ISIS right now. These people, through force and coercion, are becoming a nation. I mean, they want to become a state. So how many people does it take? At what point do you become recognized? It's a concept that I find very interesting. The whole idea of like secessionist movements and things like that. How many people does it take? I mean, even according to our Declaration of Independence, we have a right to abolish our government if it is not up to our standards. If it's not providing the stuff that we want out of it, we have the right to abolish it or alter the government in any way that we see, because the government is only serving us at our, under our consent. Any government that governs without the consent of the people is an illegitimate government. So, how many people? It's an interesting concept. And in fact, talking about collectivism, I want to talk briefly here about a book that I read, and it's called Collective Retribution. The author of the book, he's going to be on our show here in the future as a guest, and he's going to talk a little bit about it. The book, I have to tell you, Collective Retribution, check it out. Great book. I believe the author's name is D.S. Edwards. Let me double check on that real fast. I'm actually Googling it as we speak. And anyway, the book is, it's D.S. Edwards. So anyway, the book is amazing. Basically, I'll lay it out. There's and I'll try not to spoil it here. There's a threat that the government has information on, that terrorists could be orchestrating a nuclear attack, not just a dirty bomb, but they actually got nuclear weapons, and they're going to actually attack America, sneaking through into the country somehow. They don't know how, they don't know the how, they don't know the where, but anyway, terrorists are actually going to attack America in an orchestrated huge attack. and it's a process of trying to meet it off at the head. And I don't want to spoil anything else on it, but I mean, it's incredible, and it goes through the societal changes after some kind of threat like this. You know, things that happen, powers that we give the government during and after threats. So I would highly recommend that you all check that book out. Again, it's Collective Retribution. It's on Amazon.com. You can check it out right there and get it. I'll go ahead and add it to our store on our website as well, on our Amazon affiliate store. So you can all check that out as well. But great book, and I'm really looking forward to having the author on the show. He's going to join us and talk about it, and man, I'm really excited about that episode. So stay tuned for more information on that. I'll get you guys all the info that I can on what is actually going on with that show and when it will be. We haven't fine-tuned exactly when it'll be, but one of these Sundays coming up real soon. So anyway, we're going to cut to one more commercial break, and when we get back, I hope that some of you give us a call. I really want to hear what you guys have to say on any of the topics that we talked about, or if you have anything else on your mind, feel free to give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. The Mack Pack phone lines are open, so light them up, guys. We'll be right back.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back. We're wrapping up the show here. We had a really good show, I thought. I enjoyed it. So next week, I'm going to try to get a guest on here. I've been really enjoying the fact that I get an opportunity to talk to you guys direct and really focus on the issues here. I've really had a good time these last few shows. And again, I really appreciate those of you who have called in. Thank you so much. One thing I want to talk about here, things that are coming out in the media, and more specifically the movies that we're seeing nowadays. I want to talk a little bit about the upcoming movie. I think it's already out right now, The Giver. I haven't seen it yet. I definitely plan on it. I read the book very, very recently, actually. I just finished it up probably about 2 weeks ago. I read it when I was a kid. I really enjoyed it, but I forgot. I read it when I was in middle school. I forgot everything that happened. So I read it again, and I'm looking forward to seeing the differences in the book compared to the movie. I'm sure all of you know that movies, they take creative license and they change it. It becomes less of a interpretation of the book, but a reimagination, and that can obviously get some of the fans of the books upset and things like that. But I'm really excited about this book, or this movie in particular. I enjoyed the book. It was a look into, if you haven't read it, it was a look into a society that was totally controlled and delegated by their government. The government had everybody under its thumb. The government told people what they could do for a job, and they would actually appoint people what the government thought, because the government would spy on you and watch everything that you're doing and then, interpret what they thought would be the best job for you, what you would be happy with, I guess. But in terms of happiness, these people were emotionally dead. So really, they just did what they were good at and what they would be productive at. So anyway, without giving too much about it, it's this society. It's a very interesting take on this dystopian society, and I'm a big fan of dystopian society movies and books. I think that the media nowadays, movies and things like that, we're noticing a change. I think a lot of people can feel that something is wrong. A lot of people understand that things aren't supposed to be this way. The government isn't supposed to have this much power. It's unnatural. It feels unnatural. And I think that's why a lot of people are making movies about these kind of dystopian societies. These books that have been out for generations are being brought back up into the conversation. I mean, 1984 seems like it's never left. So, we see movies like the new Captain America, where they're against this big spying Leviathan, and then also movies like Batman, I believe it was The Dark Knight, where they had access to all these cell phones and they could use it for like a radar or sonar thing, so they could see and hear what's going on all around the city and things like that. But only Batman was going to use it in that one circumstance and then destroy it, so no one could ever use it again. I think people understand, and these are really conversations that we're having about our current government. I mean, the spying that's going on right now. I think people understand that it's wrong, but so many people are apathetic to it. So many people don't understand it, don't take the time to understand it, don't think about it. But our government is on the move, and they're attempting to gain more and more power, and it's up to us to get on the move too. And that's what this show is about. Trying to wake people up, inspire people to take action, not in a violent sense, but in a sense of education, inspiring. Don't just take what I say and file it away in your mental filing cabinets that you have, all right? Share the information, get out there, speak to people, talk to your neighbors, start a conversation. I know it's hard. Believe me, I know it's hard. Trying to convince somebody of what's going on, trying to open their eyes, make them aware of something that maybe they had no clue about. I know it's difficult. It's also difficult to challenge ourselves. Concepts that we have so ingrained in ourselves, things that that there's no way that our government could not have our best interest at heart. I don't want to believe these things. That it's so easy to manipulate and trick ourselves into believing these things. When you compile the information, you look at the facts, it's irrefutable. There's no really dancing around the subject. We see our government is trying to build. And this machine that they're building is not for our safety. It's not for our security. It's for their control. It's for them. For those in power to be able to tighten the noose around our necks and whip our backs to make us provide for them. We will become the servants, and they will be our masters, which is the opposite of what this country was founded on. We are the masters. They serve us. They are public servants. They're not public officials. They're public servants. Their job is to serve us, and they're doing a crappy job at it. Any person that would ask you to give up liberty is a person that you should not trust. You should be wary of. Any person that wants power, political power, wants to run for office, should be looked at with an eye of mistrust. You should, trust them, but verify, as Reagan said. Make sure that they actually are looking out for your best interest, not just through words, but with action. Make sure that the people that you are voting for and supporting politically are people of principle, men and women of principle. Don't hold water for a politician simply because they have an affiliation with a certain party, or you like their name. Don't fall prey to the trap. It's something that we all have to keep in mind. But anyway, that is our show for today. We're going to go ahead and cut out a little early. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in and most importantly for spreading the word about the show. Listeners and members of the Mack Pack, thank you. I appreciate you so much for tuning in week after week, and we appreciate your continued support. So don't forget to tune in next week. We broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can check us out at OnTheMoveShow.com, here at blogtalkradio.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And check in there often because we will be releasing clips of this show and other shows and other material. We got a bunch of original content that I'm just sitting here holding. I got so many videos that I'm waiting to finish up right now. Some of them very impactful, and I think that you all will want to take a look at it. Anyway, you can also follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow or at OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.